You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, it's our last episode before Christmas, so because I'm bound to forget, all of us here at the Hiking Radio Network wish you all the best wishes for this holiday season. Whatever you celebrate at this time of year, have a blast. You're listening to episode 353 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And because I like to shake things up a bit every now and then, our guest today, Jason Tompkins, is going to be talking to us about a trail he's kind of put together himself. He's a guy who's worked out how to spend pretty much all of his time backpacking, and he does it for the adventure and for learning about different cultures on the trail. He's a really interesting guy, and to say that he's enthusiastic about backpacking would be woefully understating how he feels about it. Jason, who is perfectly trail named as Out and About, will be on shortly. Then another guy in our Mighty Blue class of 23, Ron Ward, brings a down-to-earth attitude to the show and, surprisingly for me, turns out to love a particular rock band. Ron will be on after Jason. Then George Stefanos is approaching halfway, and he has to say goodbye to his friend Mark as he pushes on to near Harper's Ferry. So let's do it. This is Jason Tompkins, or Out and About. Our guest today is somebody who, I guess to say the very least, is pretty much obsessed with backpacking and long-distance hiking. This is Jason Tompkins, or Out and About. Hey, Jason, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Now, I reached out to you initially because I saw something about a new trail that you kind of blazed the trail, I guess. You've kind of put it together. You've named it the Carolinian, and we're going to talk about that later, or soon, in fact. But I want to talk about one or two other things first. You've kind of made hiking and backpacking pretty much a full-time gig, haven't you? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So real briefly, I've always really enjoyed being outside. I would almost always prefer being outside than inside. And over the past year or so, I've been trying to, basically live outside. So yeah, I just kind of did some juking and jiving, and been hiking for the most part since early January, late December, early January of this year, and just kind of didn't look back, and gonna continue going on for as long as I can possibly muster it.
And you're a 43-year-old guy. Is that 43? Mm-hmm. I think 43-year-old guy.
That's right.
And once again, we've had more of these people in their 40s doing this sort of thing, or not necessarily what you're doing, but certainly hiking quite a lot and cutting into their life. What was your life before that period then? What were you doing before that?
Wow, that's a big answer.
Okay, go for it.
My adult life, I went to community college and then I eventually finished up, but I dropped out a few times and traveled the country, hitchhiking and stuff like that. And then I lived in a bunch of big cities all over the country. The only state I haven't been to yet is Hawaii. Just worked different jobs. Some of them I really loved, and some of them I didn't. And any place that I did live in the country, in the U.S., I would always want to go out and explore what the natural resources and surroundings were. And I honestly just could never get enough. I was always, what's farther, what's around the next corner, or what cool little nooks and crannies can I find in this local area? What can inspire me? And it's just been amazing. And eventually last year, I just decided to go full time. Go as long as I can and see how far I can go and see how much exploration I can get. And it's really the adventure, honestly. It's always been in micro adventures and little ones. And now I'm just trying to, live a life of adventure and live a life of that richness that I've always wanted.
Well, what was your life though? You said you traveled around different countries. Do you have certain skills that are transferable around the country, or did you just kind of do any job just to fund your outdoor living?
I basically just did any job, but the
Right.
longest job that I had was in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I started off as a bicycle mechanic, and I that's probably the most transferable skill set to other
Right.
cities. And so I wound up becoming one of the owners of it's a worker-owned cooperative, and it's called the Hub Bike Co-op.
Nice.
Amazing place, and yeah, and I was a mechanic. I was a service technician. I was a service coordinator. I was one of the owners. It was super fulfilling. It was amazing. I honed my skills, but eventually I wanted to build a new skill set, and I wanted to go do long distance hiking. But a lot of those jobs were just general retail and manual labor and stuff like that.
Yeah, because when we spoke before, you said that you always, I wrote this down, you always wanted to go further on a day hike, which is quite interesting. And I asked you about the different dynamic to be long distance hiking as opposed to what you did previously. You said it was like stepping off a precipice. So tell me about that difference between the day hikes you did do and what you're suddenly doing now.
Well, I'll give you a great example. The last place that I lived was in Asheville, North Carolina, and
Hmm.
there's this one spot it used to be my favorite spot in North Carolina to hike, and until earlier this year, I found it got trumped by another spot. But I would go out there a few times with my close friend of mine, and we'd go hiking, and the Mountain to Sea Trail goes right through there, and you see that trail, and you see it go off to the east, and every time I would be like, ugh. That goes all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Like I want to see what's out there. I want to see what that looks like. And I remember earlier this year when I walked right through that intersection, that trail intersection, I stopped and I took a video and I talked about that for a second and said, I used to want to know what goes down that direction and what experiences are there. And now I know. Now I can describe every footstep. Now I've been there. I've done that. And it's just so fulfilling to want to keep going and to be able to do that. I think I'm really grateful for.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you've worked out how to do this at the moment. Anyway, you're now pretty much living outdoors as much as you possibly can. So, do you call anywhere home right now?
My backpack.
Yeah, okay, that is your home, right? Well, hang on. You're actually clearly on a computer now because we're speaking. So you've got the computer. So you're basically kind of living it this way. How have you worked it out? Do you live? Do you live cheaply on the trail? Because you know what it's like. Hiking and backpacking can be a phenomenally expensive gig. And what are you doing to hone your skills to make it more affordable?
That's a good question. I'm not technically I'm on a computer, but I'm just on my phone. That's the only
All right,
computer
okay.
I've honestly owned in 20 years.
All right, okay.
But how do I do it? I don't know. I feel grateful in a way that I didn't come from any sense of having money really. I've never really
Right,
experienced that yet. So
right.
that was a skill set that I had already had, and I feel grateful for having it because it does allow me to be able to walk around and sleep on the ground and to be able to keep within a pretty slim budget. And
Right.
then just I really enjoy foraging, and I really enjoy eating healthy. So and I've always like grown gardens and stuff like that, and
Sure,
done all
sure.
sorts of different things. Like sometimes I'll even sprout my own like lentils and stuff like that while I'm on trail. Um, so like
Right.
just keeping everything pretty modest, and it's cheap living, walking around and sleeping on the ground.
Well, I actually went the reverse. I used to have money and now I don't. That's a whole lot tougher to get used to. Oh dear. So you figured out a way to make this work financially. Is there do you see this, do you see yourself being able to sustain what you're doing right now? Because you're on a bit of a tear right now. I know you've done quite a bit already and we'll talk about that in a minute. Are you going to sustain this for the next 4 or 5 years, or do you intend to just keep going as long as you possibly can?
The intention is to do it indefinitely.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, two-part story. One is, what's the worst case scenario? I have to go get a job.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll
Like,
chest up.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. It's not going to break my heart. And then the other part of it too is like, I recognize the intersectionalities of my privileges that I have. And One of them is that if I can make this work financially within the United States, being able to do that in the future or in other countries in different parts of the world can be significantly more sustainable with the same budget.
How interesting. And you thought about that. Oh, that's interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I kind of view, though I'm not saying that I'm, let me put this in a way. Every hike that I'm doing is kind of a shakedown and a skill set building for the next adventure. Though that doesn't mean that I'm not taking in the grandeur and taking in the experiences and really getting the marrow out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know what? And I've definitely gained that from talking to you, that this is something that you're drawing so much from this, because once again, when we spoke, I always write these things down. You said that you didn't want any mental asterisk. Mm-hmm. What did you actually, well, I think I know what you meant, but what did you mean by that?
I can't coin the phrase mental asterisk. There was somebody who commented on the far out guide for the Florida National Scenic Trail. And they were basically saying that they didn't want to do any shortcuts and they wanted to stay true to the actual trail because they didn't want any mental asterisks when they told somebody that they hiked that trail. And it resonated with me. And like earlier this year in December of last year, I didn't know what kind of hiker I would be. And I was curious as to find out what kind of hiker I would be.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I was taking a shortcut on the Florida Trail, and about 1.5 miles, 2 miles in, I didn't feel good about it. And this isn't it's not elitist. It's just me and how I hike, and for anybody, enjoy yourself and enjoy the outdoors the way you see fit. And just for me, I just didn't feel good about it. So I turned around and went back and doubled back and got back on trail, and that's just turns out how I hiked, and that's fine. But yeah, I didn't want any mental asterisks. It's not even about being honest or dishonest. It's just I didn't want to have that in the back of my head.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. And I mean, I used to, when I get picked up, if I'd hitch a lift into town, mm-hmm. and if I then came back to the same spot, I would have to cross the road to touch the other side of the road before
exactly.
I went on. I don't know why. I just felt I needed to do that, and that was more me than anything else at all.
Right. Nobody's counting. Nobody's paying attention, and if they are, that's their own business, not yours.
Absolutely. Now, I want to pick up on something you just said about foraging. Is that mm-hmm. something you do actively on trail? You're looking for, or you've learned the sort of foods you can sort of harvest on the trail?
I try to. I would not say that I'm any good at it. Although I haven't gotten
You're not dead yet, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. I try to, though. I try to pay attention. I try to do a little bit of research and stuff. What I can find out, I will definitely use that and either snack while I'm hiking or put it into my my meals and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the more vegetables and stuff I can get on trail, the better.
But you told me you're a cold soaker, is that right? Or do you also cook sometimes?
That's correct. I'm a cold soaker. I honestly, and it's still weird to me. Like I'm an Eagle Scout too. And I've been camping my whole life, and I've honestly never had a stove.
Jeez. So you're 43, as we mentioned before. Why did you leave it till you're 43? Or is this the thing that, and I often think about this, that a window opens in your life sometime and you feel you can either go through that window or not go through that window. You obviously chose to go through it at 43. Was there a time when you were, 28 or 35 you could have done it? Or why did you leave it relatively a long time?
I think you'll appreciate the story. When I was around, I think I was 21, 22, something like that, I attempted the Appalachian Trail. And I got Giardia and got laid up in Damascus for a little bit, recovered from that. But then just 2 days after I got back on trail, I didn't know that I had a stress fracture in one of my feet. And that stress fracture 2 days after getting back on trail from recovering from Giardia broke into a full break. So my foot broke and I had to get off trail. And I'd always told myself, I'm going to finish the AT before I'm 40. I'm going to finish the AT before I'm 40. And then 42 rolled around and I said, come on, man, you got to poop or get off the pot. So it was really that. It was like I'd always told myself that I would do it by this certain age. And I didn't. And I let myself down. And I know how passionate I am about traveling. I know how passionate I am about adventure, and I'd already done the big city thing. I'd lived in a lot of the major cities in the country, and I already knew
Sure.
what that was like. I'm familiar with that, and yeah, I wanted to try something new.
But you did get back on trail at some stage, didn't you? Because I know you told me you met Ken and Kayla, who were one of our guests on the trail. So how did you meet them?
Kayla, a trail named Nugs, she was part of the Florida Trail family for almost the entirety of the trail.
Oh, nice. When did
Yeah,
you actually do? When did you actually do the Florida Trail?
I did that in January and February earlier of this year. That was my first long distance trail.
And what was that like? Was it an enjoyable experience? Because I must say, I've watched the video of Dixie doing the Florida Trail.
Sure.
I can't think of anything I'd less like to do. I live in Florida. I live in Florida myself, and it's and just going through those bloody swamps. What a nightmare! I couldn't imagine doing it. So tell me what it was like to do.
Oh, brother. Again, talking about being grateful for my own past, and I grew up down in South Florida. I actually grew up in Palm Beach County, just
All
about
right.
3 hours southeast of where you are, and I, yeah, I'm familiar with the swamps. I'm familiar with mosquitoes. Like that's where I grew up. I love the beaches, and I grew up tromping around and getting into trouble as a latchkey kid, And the trail, two-part story. One, the trail itself, I absolutely loved it. It's growing up, I wasn't really into the natural story that Florida tells, but having gotten older and being gone for a long time and traveling over the
Sure.
country and
Sure.
having come back, I fell in love with the natural ecology of it. And yeah, hiking for the Florida Trail absolutely engendered that love, and it was absolutely beautiful and wonderful. Even with the road walks, I truly did enjoy it. However, some parts were absolutely miserable, and that was entirely on me. In that it was my first long hike, and people say your feet are going to swell, so I bought shoes a little bit bigger, but I didn't know that they were going to swell that much, and I didn't know how long these particular shoes would last. So
Sure.
I did find out, but I wound up wearing a pair of shoes twice as long as about 400 miles extra after I should have replaced them. So I had a lot of foot and knee pain for a significant portion of the trail, but that was on
Right.
me. This is how we learn lessons, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You do stupid things, something happens, and you don't do that stupid thing again. But apparently,
Exactly.
you did it for another 400 miles.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. She was part of your family, and I'm so interested in this. You're living this life, which I suspect you have to be on your own quite a bit, particularly when it's just about to come to the Carolinian, particularly when you were on the Carolinian this year.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you had a tramley on the Florida Trail. Are you a bit of a loner, or do you think that the best of you is that person out on the trail by yourself? Or is that the same thing?
50-50, honestly. I genuinely absolutely adore having a trail family. That it was anywhere between okay, so caveat, I only slept by myself one night out of the entire Florida Trail.
All right.
Um
Okay.
and
Cool.
that was and that was oddly enough like next to a gas station that I wound up hanging out with the locals after hours in the gas station with. So I wasn't really alone. You know what I mean?
I do. Yes, I do.
But
Yeah.
that trail family, any given night, we were anywhere between 4 and a dozen people.
Oh,
So it was a
wow.
big family. It would stretch and grow, and our
Yeah.
gravitational pull, as I would say, would sometimes wax and wane. But I loved it.
Sure.
I truly, truly enjoyed it. And all the dynamics that come with it. But on the other hand, too, I absolutely loved being by myself later on in the year, and I didn't even realize it until I met up with a hiker on the pretty close to the end of the Mountain to Sea Trail, and they'd asked me how long I was by myself, how long I'd been hiking solo. And it kind of shocked me because I hadn't recognized that I'd been by myself for 4 months for about 2,200 miles. And to put it in perspective for your listeners, I was by myself for the length of the entire Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
That blows
My
my
gosh.
mind.
Yeah, you know what? You sound a really happy guy as well. So,
I had a
so
blast.
that spending time by yourself. Do you? I mean, I found I drove myself crazy anytime I was by myself. All the voices in my head and so on.
Sure.
You know. Anyway, look, I want to talk about the Carolinian because I was so fascinated when I saw this. Let's start by what it actually is and how much of a trail it currently is.
Okay. The actual trail, I've changed it a little bit. So the trail it's not recognized or anything like that. It's just my whatever.
We'll take it. We'll take it. You should. This is yours. So you go for it.
Yeah, I pieced together a trail that I'm calling the Carolinian, and it's 2,200 miles long. It consists of 3 complete long distance through hikes of the Bartram Trail at 116 miles, the Palmetto Trail. Okay, so the Bartram Trail is in North Carolina, a little bit in Georgia and South Carolina. The Palmetto Trail, 500 miles across South Carolina, and the Mountain to Sea Trail that goes from the Atlantic Ocean in North Carolina to the Tennessee border at Clingman's Dome, which is also the highest point on the Appalachian Trail because it intersects right there.
Yeah.
And then I'm making the Carolina Road Walk optional. I don't think that there's going to be too many wackos that want to do a 375-mile highway walk from to connect the Palmetto and the Mountain to Sea Trail. So if you were to do the entire thing, it would be 2,200 miles long, a little bit longer than the Appalachian Trail. But if you cut out the optional road walk, it would be 1,850.
That's funny. So, when we talked about the 375 miles road walk, which is a lot of walking, by the way,
it is
on roads, you said that you would tend to go on side quests. Mm-hmm. What were those quests that you actually went on?
The side quests weren't so much on the road walk. For me, a side quest is doing like a spur trail.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Anytime I can, I specifically the last trail that he did this year was the Superior Hiking Trail in Minnesota. And I had to slow down my average miles per day because I kept going on all these side quests. I kept being like, am I ever going to make it to camp? I'm having too much fun out here.
Yeah, it's fantastic though. And so what brought it to mind though, to make something of it? You know, did you just look at a map or was this something about exploring the Carolinas being north and south?
Well, so my grandma is from Bryson City, North Carolina, which is just outside of Cherokee and the Cherokee Reservation and the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. So I've been going up there since I was 2 years old. So I already knew about the Appalachian Trail. I knew about the Mountain to Sea Trail. I already had plans to do the Appalachian Trail next year as part of something bigger. But last year when I was planning out my hikes, I was like, I really want to do the Mountain to Sea Trail. That sounds wonderful. I'm familiar with Western North Carolina, but not so much with any of the rest of it. And I wanted to check it out. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll do the Florida Trail. That'll be my shakedown and see if I like long distance hiking. And it's still close to home, so I would get out, you know.
It's about an 1,100 mile shakedown, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'll do the Florida Trail, and then I'll go do the Mountain to Sea Trail. And then I heard about the Foothills Trail. I was like, maybe I'll do the Foothills Trail too. That sounds like a cool 75-mile trail. And an old coworker at the time told me about the Palmetto Trail, and that was about it. Then I was like, I looked at the map and was like, well, what if I connected the Mountain to Sea to a 55-mile section of the Appalachian Trail to the Bartram to the Palmetto, and it'd make a big C, you know, an ocean to mountain to ocean. Yeah, and then nice. I was planning on just doing that and taking a ferry from Charleston up to Nags Head to connect the two.
That would have been cool.
I know, yeah, it would have been a lot of
fun. Couldn't you row up there or something?
You could.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I'm not.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then on the Florida Trail, I was like, well, I have time. Why not just walk it? And I'll see if I can figure out a way to do it that's not on highway. And it does turn out, if you were to want to do the Carolina Road Walk and connect the Palmetto and the Mountain to Sea Trail, you can get off the major highways that I took. And I only took the major highways because I just wanted to get that part done with.
Sure.
You can totally do that. It'll take a little bit longer. It adds a few more miles because you can take
But that might be quite nice, though, to get off the main highways, because
Absolutely.
you can go through some side towns and stuff like that. I would think, because
absolutely.
you like an adventure, don't you? So
I do. And that route that you would take to get off the main highway is actually the East Coast Greenway. It's a bicycle route that goes from Key West, Florida to Canada. So you can get off the main highway and do the East Coast Greenway.
Right.
Yeah.
How cool! How cool is that? So the logistics of hiking, actually, in terms of the trails themselves, they exist already, don't they? So those logistics, did you kind of make everything up as you went along? Because when we're on the AT, we go from shelter to shelter. A lot of us go from shelter to shelter. That wasn't the situation you were in, was it?
No, there was definitely not shelter to shelter. I think out of all 2,200 miles, there were 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think I stayed at 4 shelters. 2 on the AT and 2 in eastern North Carolina.
All right. Okay. And I know you're actually quite a proponent of road walking. You quite kind of like it. You said that trails get you country, roads get you culture. Tell us how that manifested itself to you then. Why do roads get you culture?
Yeah, the roads. See, the trails get you country part is that is why a lot of people go out and do these hikes. Obviously, to get a little bit of peace of mind, a little solitude, to get out in the backcountry, and I love that. And that's definitely a big part of why I go out there. But there's also something to roads get you culture in that if you do have the time and you do want to go explore, the only way you're really going to get the experience of really dipping your toes into the subtleties of the places that you're going through is by going on the roads. And that's where you're going to get the subtleties of dialect. That's where you're going to get the subtleties of the foods that they're cooking, the foods that they're making. You're going to get the subtleties of mannerisms, and you'll be able to find out about these local histories that are so rich and so diverse. If you're open to the experiences and meeting all these people that I just genuinely love so much. And
were they significant, those cultural differences in the people and places that you encountered?
They were. Sometimes I would have like an internal giggle when I would hear I remember this one time I was taking a break and charging some devices at this fish camp in South Carolina. And I heard this staffer with this deep, swampy South Carolina accent. And I had not heard that on this trip yet. And it just warmed my heart. I just love those little subtleties. And then you also have also down in the eastern portion of the very end down by South Carolina, down in the grassy wetlands by the ocean. I've never heard of it before. There's a language called Gullah, and it's a mixture of West African slave, French, and I believe in English too. So you can still hear some of that dialect in the culture. And it's just so rich and so, I don't know, fulfilling that how could I not want to do that?
Yeah.
And the food, oh my gosh, you still my beating heart, the
food. Yeah, I'm sure. So I know you mentioned you video stuff. I know you've got a video channel. Is that right?
I'm actually currently working on doing the final edits to open up my YouTube channel.
All right, cool.
Now, yeah,
cool. So, hopefully recording all this, because you've obviously looked into backpacking as a means of cultural exploration in many ways, as part of your, not shtick. That's not what I mean, but as part of your idea of backpacking, it is to do all these different things, to being on the road and doing your adventures and your side quests and so on. Are you recording this yourself on video, and is that where it's going to end up on your YouTube channel, or are you writing it down?
I've mostly been writing it down. I'm really, really, really new to taking video, and I still feel nervous and anxious about even talking on a video and taking video of myself. But these are things if your adventures don't scare you a little bit, then are they big enough? Are they worth doing?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's something that I'm trying to do more, to push myself and take videos of other people and our experiences, and even of myself. And I just have to get more comfortable. And the only way to get more comfortable is to do it. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned obviously partly went down the AT, but and I know about the AT because that's one I've been on. Obviously, what are some of the trail towns that you went through and that were significant towns for you to go through? And are they equipped? Are they equipped as trail towns in many ways?
Some of them are, some of them are not. Columbia, South Carolina is the capital, and you walk right through the federal district. It's not a trail town, but it's a major metropolitan city. But it's still cool to walk through. But then you have like Wilmington, North Carolina is it's a college town. But I also had the best Vietnamese food in my life. That was absolutely fantastic, and it was a nice chilly day, so those spices really warmed me up.
To be fair, Jason, when you're hiking, any food tastes great, doesn't it?
Yeah,
really?
That's true. Yeah,
you can make ramen taste great. Yeah,
you ain't lying. Trail towns, Elkin, North Carolina was an absolutely fantastic trail town. I would say, honestly, my favorite town experience of the entire year really was Ocracoke Island, Ocracoke Village and Ocracoke Island on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. It's just this tiny little island that you have to take a ferry to and from. And it's just a really cool, small community that it's really hopping during the tourist season in the summertime, but then it shuts down, and it's got a completely different culture from my understanding in the wintertime. And it just, from the people that I met there, it's just, everybody takes care of each other. Everybody is looking out. And like the rich history of runaway, self-freed runaway slaves having gone over there and building their communities there, to Blackbeard making a stronghold hideout there and that's where his life was ended on Ocracoke Island, and having the oldest working lighthouse on the eastern seaboard. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah,
and I think going out, the only way you can see this stuff, you can see it on telly if you like, but you won't really see it until you actually go and actually see it in person, will you? So
that's right.
We can all watch stuff on TV, but it isn't the same thing in any way at all.
It's kind of like that phrase, you can't get wet from the word water.
That's right. That's right. Now, I know you've been interested in what Jester did in helping bring attention to the Mountains to Sea Trail and the already strong Mountains to Sea Trail organisation. Do you think the Carolinian will have some legs or have some appeal for people?
I hope so. The whole point of doing it, yes, definitely part of it is for me and my own adventure and getting to explore parts of the country that I've not been to. But then the other part of it too is I grew up in the South, and the South gets a lot of bad rap sometimes. Sure. And there are beautiful cultures down here, and there are beautiful places. And it's also technically, you could make it a 4-season trail, so people can come from other parts of the country and other parts of the world and do this in the wintertime. And I just want to showcase and show people that there is some beauty here. There is a rich cultures, because it's certainly not just one.
Nice.
I would like that. Yeah. Yes, there's a fair amount of road walking, even without including the Carolina road walk, but that's okay. That's where you get to meet all the people.
The idea of doing it is more attractive to me if you do some of the side roads as opposed to, and you said the green, what do you call it? The green path, whatever it's called, that you could do.
Oh, the East Coast Greenway.
East Coast Greenway. That would make it much more interesting from my perspective.
Sure.
So you completed it. And I often ask this of the AT and other long distance trail completers. How did you feel once it was done?
Oh, I was elated. I honestly, the really wild part about it was the day that I completed the entire Carolinian, I wound up being able to stay at the exact same campsite that I started it at.
Nice.
Like the same number, so it was really special. I took a video when I got back to that campsite, just laughing and giggling. And I was really at a loss for words. It was just, part of it was like, I can't believe that I just did this. And then also like, what a stupid idea. And also what a really fun and creative adventure.
But you know what? I suppose with you don't have the thing that most of us have when we complete a trail. We're going to go home and go back to normal life. You're going to carry on hiking, aren't you? So I suppose for you, it's just part of it. Because I remember asking Jack Jones, who did the calendar year Triple Crown.
Quadzilla.
Yeah, Quadzilla. And I said to him, you didn't get the chance to celebrate any of your hikes, did you? And I think he was surprised by the question, because you come to the end of, say, the AT, and then you've got to go to the PCT or the CDT. And so it isn't over. And there is a distinct feeling when a trail is over For me, anyway, it was, and I've done a few other trails,
Sure.
obviously. But you didn't get that. You were just elated you'd done it, and then what's next? Is that what you kind of feel?
Sort of. So even with the Carolinian, like I finished that thing, and the very next day, I started my through hike of the Foothills Trail.
Of course you did.
It starts right there. It starts right there at the campsite.
Right. Oh, by the way, tell us where that is. So where does the Carolinian start and end with you?
Where I started it was at the beginning of the western terminus of the Palmetto Trail, which is northwestern South Carolina.
Cool.
And it just does kind of a big loop, sort of a figure eight, through both of those states.
Right.
Yeah, so I just finished it up, and the next day woke up and started the Foothills Trail. But to answer your question about you didn't get to kind of relish in the completion of doing one of these things.
Yeah.
And I would honestly have to say, because I've thought about it, is that I'm not out there for racking up another trail. And I'm not saying that this is why other people are doing it. This is why they feel those emotions. But for lack of a better phrase, I'm not there like knocking off trails to put a notch in my belt.
Sure.
It's more for me, every day is that adventure. So when I finish, say, the Carolinian and the next day start on the Foothills Trail, it's not like I just finished the Carolinian. It's more like I'm so grateful to be out here today. I'm so grateful to experience whatever the weather is today. It's been a real meditate. Exactly. It's been a real meditation and gratitude, and a real meditation and being present and faithful to my current life and my own life, my own living, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense to me. So you went and did the Foothills. By the way, where are you now?
I'm in Palm Beach County, South Florida, Southeast
All
Florida.
right. Okay. Slacker.
Hey, it's a lot warmer down here than it snowed on me in Minnesota in October when I was hiking.
I bet. And where are you off to next?
Oh boy. So in about a month, I'm going to head down to Key West and start my northern through hike of the Eastern Continental Trail, which will go from Key West through Newfoundland.
Wow. How many miles is that then? How many miles is that?
5,700.
Oh my gosh. Oh God almighty. But that's not the... I seem to remember that isn't the end of your hiking for next year, is it? You're going to do something after that, aren't you?
Yeah, that's true. But budget being healthy enough, and me having a little bit of time, hopefully, to take a break between the Eastern Continental Trail and taking a flight across the Pacific Ocean to New Zealand. I would like to hike New Zealand's Te Araroa, that goes from the tip of the northern island to the tip of the southern island. So all the way through New Zealand. I would absolutely love to do that. You
are an interesting dude, I tell you. I'm thinking all the time. I've had prepared questions, but I've been going off my prepared questions and away from them sometimes as I think of things. And so your hike next year, the Eastern Continental Trail. I know other people have done this. I would love to have you back on the show to talk about it next year, because obviously when you do it, which I've no doubt you'll be able to do it, and just come and share that story with us, because I think you've got an interesting take on this, and you just go out and have an adventure. And I'm then wondering what it's going to be like to finish a trail for you that's 5,500 miles long. I'm sure there'll be some more emotion than what it was just right, we're going to start the Foothills tomorrow. So and I really want to find out what that is when you finish that one next year. Okay.
I would absolutely love to come back on. I do agree with you. I do think that it will be different. Hiking the entire northwestern hemisphere of the planet is a little different.
Yeah.
And there's also something too that I'm super looking forward to on the Eastern Continental Trail, and I think you'll appreciate this, and is harkening back to, remember I said about 20 years ago I attempted the Appalachian Trail and only got a little bit north of Damascus.
Yeah,
that's 20 years ago, and I started in late May, so I saw only two other through hikers. I didn't see a single trail angel. I didn't see any hostels. It was just really bare. I didn't see anybody, honestly, and I'm really excited to see the juxtaposition between having done that then and starting, I intend to hit the Appalachian Trail at latest on April 1st. So I'll be
Nice.
right there in the height of the
Yes.
bubble. I'll be really, it'll be really interesting to see what that dynamic is and see how I operate within that dynamic and how I work within it. I'm very excited about that.
I'm fascinated by that. Well, look, I really appreciate you coming and talk to us about it. I'm sorry for the couple of delays we had, but I appreciate you coming on, and I wish you so much good fortune next year, and would love to hear from you again when you finish that trail.
Thank you so much, Mighty Blue.
Okay, man. Take it easy, okay?
You too.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
Isn't he an interesting character? He's worked out how to live very simply, and he's following his passion. I'm not sure it's something I could do myself, yet his enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself wondering about the apparent dichotomy of being very social, yet often alone for miles and miles and days on end. He's found out what works for him, though, and he's pursuing it exactly how he wants to. Even coming up with a new trail is quite radical, isn't it? I hope he has plenty to tell us when he comes back on next year to talk about the Eastern Continental Trail, when, of course, he'll be rubbing shoulders with the bubble on the AT. A big thanks goes this week to those of you who've bought stuff on our store at hrntradingpost.com. And remember, you can also find it through our hikingradionetwork.com website. I've been working out how to reduce prices and to introduce free shipping on the store. I haven't quite finished it yet, but it should be done in a couple of days. If you've bought something, then drop me a line and I'll refund you to honour the new prices and free shipping. I told you I was still tweaking stuff, so this is another one of those tweaks. Now, let's meet Ron Ward from our Mighty Blue class of 23. Here's Ron. So our next member of the Mighty Blue class of 2023 is Ron Ward. Hey Ron, how are you?
I'm doing great this morning, Steve. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. Where are you from? Where's that accent? Because we've just been talking about accents before we actually started recording.
I am from Columbus, Georgia, and so that's on the border with Alabama,
right,
about 90 miles south of Atlanta. And I'm born and raised
you're south
here.
of Atlanta. South of Atlanta, okay.
Yes, sir.
So, and you're doing the trail, obviously, in 2023. And the first question I'm asking people really is, what is your why? Because we all have a different reason for doing this. And often it's a thing that's come from our past. We were thinking we want to do it since we were kids and so on. But for some reason, that window of opportunity opens. So what is your why, and how did that window open for you?
Well, I ask myself that question all the time and always have a different answer, it seems.
Right.
I come up with something different talking to myself about it. But like many others before me, I've thought about the through hike for a very, very long time, like since middle school when I was little.
Wow.
And the time's never been right until now.
Right.
And I have the time and I have the budget. And I'll never be younger. I'll never be healthier.
That's one guarantee,
and,
You'll never be younger.
This is, I see this as a great opportunity to challenge myself.
So what happened? Did you retire?
Well, it's not really a retirement. I'm sort of taking a sabbatical.
Nice.
Though I've worked for the same company here better part of 30 years and largely done the same thing. And this is just a great opportunity for me to make a change. I'm ready and willing to do it, and who knows what this will bring.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
And,
sure.
Steve, part of your podcast and the ocean of YouTube videos that are available and the channels that you can subscribe to and the books that you can read and the articles you can get access to, they all talk about this transformative nature of this experience.
Absolutely.
Unlike going on safari or some other bucket list item or going to Australia for 3 weeks. This is something I think that can reset a person when they feel called to experience that reset. And so that's kind of where I am in my mind, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I can tell you, by the way, I've done a safari and I've been to Australia many a time. And I tell you, the AT was definitely the experience of my life. So I think you're right there. So, you say you get this feeling you of a calling. Does your first does your firm that you're working for know you're going?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's what, because
they know.
Because I had a conversation with somebody the other day. They hadn't actually told their boss yet. No. So,
Yeah, they hadn't told them.
Right.
Yeah.
So that they know you're going, and they've known it for some time, I presume. How much notice do you have to give them that you are actually going to go?
Really, just been recent.
Nice. Nice.
Actually, there's an opportunity for me to do this and come back, and there's no promise that I would come back and go right back into the same role that I have. Sure. Because no corporation's going to do that. But they recognize my skill set and the experience that I have and the value that I add to the team, and said, call us when you get back.
Sure. So what is your business? What are you in?
I'm in banking.
You're in banking.
I'm in banking.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when are you? We're now talking on December the 8th. When are you actually planning on starting?
My plan is to start on March 23rd.
March 23rd. One of the Mighty Blue Class 23 I recorded yesterday is March 22nd. So there's going to be a lot of you out there. Why did you choose March 23rd? Is that something that do things align at that time, or you just don't want to have too much cold weather, or what?
Yes, I don't want to have too much cold weather. I picked a day off of the ATC website that didn't have the most people already registered. Not registers. I know not everybody registers, and I know. But I want to give myself an honest shot at getting to Katahdin before the mountain closes, sure. Even if I go slow and take some days off. I'm not trying to kill myself through this either. And, good plan. I want to be smart about it, and I think I don't want to be racing against some calendar or clock.
It's funny though, you do find yourself to a degree still not so much racing against it. You do find yourself to a degree, especially if you're hiking around people you want to spend some time with as well. You find yourself compromising in some ways, but you have to be able to be adaptable on the way along. So I'm sure that you know that from listening to the podcast and reading books and doing YouTube and so on. But as long as you're prepared to be adaptable, that's the important thing. So what actually is your hiking experience and backpacking experience thus far?
Well, I've done a couple of 10-mile, 15-mile long distance stuff on the Benton-MacKay Trail. Nice. up in North Georgia and North Carolina, sure. The Tellico Plains area. I've got some friends that we like to spend 4 or 5 days, nice long weekends in that Cherokee National Forest area between it borders Tennessee and North Carolina, sure. And we scramble around up there. We used to go in our old Land Rovers and go riding around in the woods, and then the state closed that park to motorized vehicles, so we just go camping and hiking now. So
are you going by yourself, or are you taking one of your buddies with you?
On this trip, no, I'm just going by myself, unless somebody wants to come along. I haven't got any takers.
and how are you feeling? Are you feeling you nervous about being by yourself, or are you quite relaxed?
I'm not nervous about being by myself because I know that there will be other people on trail, and it just seems like that's part of the excitement is who's around the bend, who am I going to meet, and who won't I meet, and who's going to meet me, and why will my path cross with someone else? Is there something I can do? Is there something I'm supposed to learn? That's really all part of this.
You really sound open to it, which is great. Journey. You sound open to it. So you're preparing physically, I guess, by doing some of these hikes and these long hikes. Frankly, I don't think much can prepare you physically for what it's going to be like when it smashes you around the face at the top of Springer Mountain. What about, and you've obviously read this before about there's been a mental challenge as well. You have none of us know if we have the strength to approach this mentally. How are you looking at that?
I think it's a big part of the preparation. I think experiencing hardship, whether it's weather, physical injury, just that being miserable in the cold, wet, and mud.
Yeah, you get plenty of that.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things, Steve, that I'm really trying to get my mind wrapped around is, don't quit on a bad day,
Oh yeah.
and don't let dehydration make you feel like you can't go on. So don't let
I tell
your
you what, Ron,
nutritional.
that is one of the things. That dehydration thing is something that took me by surprise. I've not mentioned it much in this show, but it took me by surprise how important it is to stay hydrated and drink as much as you can when you can. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can go downhill if you haven't had water. So be very aware of that. And you mentioned, obviously, you've got a sabbatical, so I presume you're financially pretty well sorted in terms of how you cope with it financially. Are you looking to have a relatively comfortable time by spending quite a bit of time in towns and hotels, or are you going to fully immerse yourself in hiker trash?
I'm closer to hiker trash already than you would believe.
But you got the beard. You got the beard.
Yeah, yeah. I take that by as it comes. I think probably the average that I've read about or have heard about is, maybe take one day a week off. And that may be too much. It may be just right. It may be not enough. I feel physically ready to start training to get even more ready.
Yeah. And did you buy new equipment for this, or have you just gone with stuff you've accumulated over the years?
I've got a cart full at every website.
Of course you have.
out there, just waiting for me to make the decision. Now I do have 2 pair of shoes coming this week, so hopefully they'll be here tomorrow.
Right.
That I can try out the Altas, the Zero Drop, and then the Hoka Speed Goat. I want to try.
Right. Cool.
I want to try that, and I walk about. Every morning, I'm walking at least 4 miles at a
Do you know what?
time.
4 miles, even though you can't equate it, but it's taking 4 miles out of your day, and 4 miles is an hour and a half, I guess, of walking even in the neighbourhood. That's a considerable commitment as well, and that helps you make that commitment once you get out there. You'll be walking longer miles, obviously, eventually, but you start with shorter miles. And what about support? You getting support from home? Is there family?
Oh, yeah.
Are they happy you're going, or comfortable that you're going? Let's say.
We were talking about this last night. My wife is very supportive, and she has said, when I told her about this, I did a lot of planning. I'll be honest with you, I did a lot of planning without saying anything.
Bet you got a spreadsheet.
Anybody.
You're a banker. Bet you got a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I do. Well, I stole it off of somebody's website, and so I just found a chart.
Sure.
But I've been doing a lot of planning, just kind of on my own by myself, and then decided if I'm really going to figure out how to do this, and I'm really going to commit to do this, then I need to tell my wife about this. And this was a few weeks ago.
Good move.
Yeah, and I wanted to be able to answer her questions, so I had to do a ton of research and be able to answer. Well, here's how I'm going to pay for it, and here's what will continue to have on auto draft while I'm gone: the mortgage and the insurance, and I'll pay the property taxes. I'll leave you 2 checks to send in the mail, for the first half and the second, that sort of thing, all that logistical stuff. Sure. Yeah. And she told me the other day, she said, you need a change. It's time for a change. You need to get off this treadmill for a while.
That's great.
Figuratively speaking. So, and she said that this morning. She wished me luck with you and said, stay energized, tell your story. Well, she wants me to write a book. I mean, she's like, I don't want you to video the whole thing, but journal.
Yeah, definitely
keep track of your experiences and your thoughts and the ups and downs, and we'll figure out a way for me to send that back to her by email, social media, or whatever.
I think it's incredibly important to keep a record of what you do, because a lot of the days will merge into other days. So writing it down allows you to, when you read it back, I promise this will happen. When you read it back, what you've written on a day, you'll be able to see where you were. You actually see it in your mind's eye. Well, this is how I feel about it. You see it in your mind's eye, and you can see things you haven't even written about. You remember something else that's not even in your writing. So to keep that journal is really important. There are lots of great apps out there you can use, and perhaps we can talk about that offline. And are you tenting or are you hammocking, by the way?
Oh, tent.
Okay. And do you expect to stay in the tent as opposed to in the shelters?
After hearing about the guy who had the copperhead
Yes.
bunking with him this morning, I'm probably going to sidestep at least that one. I'm going to go back and and re-listen to that because I've been around copperheads, brother. I don't want to be around them. So, if weather drives, we'll drive a lot of that. If it's rainy and super cold or something like that, I'll probably hang out in the shelter. But I want to have a tent that is easily pitched, and the setup and the takedown is intuitive and not problematic. That's one thing I love to camp, but I hate the tear down. When you strike the tent at the end of the day, I can't stand doing that with these big heavy canvas jobs. So I want to get something ultralight and
of course, yeah. Well, funnily enough, I bought a tarp tent Rainbow when I first went in 2014. I went with a different one in 2019, but I watched that video, the setup video, 40 times before I was comfortable I could do it. And amazingly, after 3 or 4 minutes, it was set up. I couldn't believe it. So you're absolutely right. Getting comfortable with your gear is really important. And so I know you're looking forward to the whole experience. Everybody is, but is there something you're really, really looking forward to in particular?
It's I want to be part of that culture, that trail family.
Sure. Right.
I sort of yearn for that in my life. I've heard so many people on your show and other, on Trail Talk and all the other podcasts.
Sure.
I've heard so many people reference the community and how we may not go out there as the best people, but while we're out there, we're the best versions of ourselves. And
I agree.
This is a crazy world, and you can't turn on the news or listen to talk radio or even, a country station without there being a political ad or somebody making some statement about something. And I just want off for a little while.
And you'll find that happens out there. People leave their religion and their politics at the door, and they meet each other where they are, which is in the woods. And you're absolute equals out there. And is there something that you're really not looking forward to?
That I'm not looking forward to?
Yeah.
I don't want to get norovirus. I don't want to get
that's not a thing between not looking forward to. You just want to stay well, I presume, in that case. I mean, I understand that.
I don't want to come off because I get injured or sick.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a slightly difficult question, that, because you don't know what you're going to encounter till you get out there. You will soon find out, though, when you get out there, that the thing you weren't even thinking of is you think, oh, shit, I hate doing this. There'll be something you say like that one day. And what about trail names? Are you going to allow people to name you, or are you going to see how it goes? Name yourself?
I think I'm going to let that happen.
Dangerous game. Game.
Well, I don't have to accept it.
You could be Redbeard. So. You could be Redbeard. Look at that. You could be, or you could be Grateful Dead. I see you've got a Grateful Dead poster or something behind you in the.
I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan.
You're Deadhead. Oh no, there you go. Fantastic.
I'm a huge fan, and it's taken a while, but after the last 29 years, my she's right there with me now.
Oh wow, impressive.
I saw him a bunch of times when I was in college, and that has a little something to do with that vagabond lifestyle.
Sure. I can see that totally. Yes, of course I can.
And the bandanas and the all the clothes and all that kind of stuff. That just it's so quintessentially trail culture and Grateful Dead. I just see the two as a pretty good marriage. There are a lot of signs in 2022 that I have encountered that it's hard for me to explain to anyone. But there have been a lot of signs that point me in this direction. I need to do this.
Wow.
And I can't articulate it. I lack the words.
That's okay. It's okay. You and I will catch up every couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, whatever, maybe more than that, and we'll see how you're going, and you'll learn the words. You'll get the words because let the trail come to you. Don't decide what you're going to do before you go. Ignore your spreadsheet. Check your plans out the window because you're gonna, and just enjoy the experience of just absorbing yourself in that culture and absorbing yourself in the woods, and you'll have a blast. So I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it. We will catch up with you again before you go with how your preparations are going. And I would like to say to it, as I do to everybody else, is I wish you well and I hope you have a blast.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Good to talk to you. Take it easy. Bye.
Yep.
He's a thoughtful guy, and he's considered the transformative experience he's about to undergo. And he seems completely open to it. I've got to tell you, when he goes back to that bank after he finishes, everything will feel different. I wonder how he's going to cope with the changes that are definitely going to happen to him. Thanks as ever go to our lovely donors. This week our monthly donors, Betty McInerney, John Cratler, Sean Deadwiley, Sharon James, Anne Pickin and Emmanuel Bravaramas have stepped up, while we had 2 kind donations from Catherine Valley and Philip Pierce. Philip left a nice note, so I'm going to read it to you. He wrote, I started from the beginning and have listened to all your episodes. Oh my God, that's a lot. I just caught up recently. Your show is really inspiring and entertaining. I love your format and interviewing skills. That's kind of you to say so, Philip. And I'm especially glad that you find our guests inspiring and entertaining. That means a lot. Now, with George getting ever closer to Harper's Ferry, he says goodbye to his friend Mark. Those trail farewells can be really gut-churning. You can have been with somebody for only a few days or for 4 months, and yet the intensity of the experience you've shared is so visceral that their leaving hurts you in a way that you never suspect when you walked under that arch at Amicalola just a month or so before. Our class of 23 will soon get to feel that. I'll see you next week. Happy Christmas. Chapter 11. A Backpacker in Paris. Tom Floyd Wayside, Virginia, to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Friday, the 8th of July, 1983, mile 946.7. An extremely nice dog showed up at Tom Floyd's shelter last night at 9 o'clock, just as Mark and I were getting ready to go to sleep. A cute, friendly, quiet, husky mix. Then the couple he was hiking with arrived. We sort of got off on the wrong foot when the guy immediately asked Mark and me if either of us snored. He informed us that they were both light sleepers and that they would be forced to pitch a tent if we did. Mark and I exchanged a "Who are these people?" look. Mark said that he had no idea because he was usually asleep at the time. I told him that I snored like a buzzsaw, hoping that he would simply go away. After a brief conference, they decided to lay their sleeping bags out on the sun deck in front of the shelter, which was a logical solution in that they would be all of 5 feet away from the uncouth louts who had the nerve to snore in their shelter. They filled the entire deck with themselves and their gear, which would turn any nocturnal visit to the woods by Mark and me into a challenging obstacle course. It was 10 o'clock when they began cooking dinner, which must have involved at least 15 courses, considering the incredible clatter of pots and pans which kept me tossing and turning for the next couple of hours. It was still going full blast around midnight when I finally managed to doze off, making sure to lie on my back for maximum snoring intensity. I said goodbye to Mark this morning at 5:30 when he set out on his 32-mile hike. I told him to drop me a line in the shelter registers. My first 3 miles completed the descent from the Blue Ridge to the Appalachian Trail crossing of US Highway 522. Just before the road, I passed through an area which had been dubbed the Tick Farm by 80 hikers. It consisted of about a half mile of very tall grass which was simply crawling with their little mothers. I'd been forewarned. In the shelter register at Tom Floyd, one girl had written that she pulled 70 ticks off a dog after hiking this stretch. I was lucky. I only found about 15 or 20 on me. I stopped once every minute to check until I cleared the area, finding 2 or 3 ticks clinging to my socks each time. The trail just across the highway from the tick farm passed through land owned by the National Zoological Park. I saw my first African antelope on the Appalachian Trail through a dense, stagnant haze and a tall wire fence running alongside the path. Today was shaping up to be a memorable scorcher. High grass often intruded on the footway here too, but I only found 1 additional tick on myself. The AT route played a little game that I like to call Lost in the Woods for the next 6 miles. I went left, right, up, down, reverse, left, up, right down, until I expected at any moment to walk right smack into myself. The last mile down into Manassas Gap followed small country lanes. I arrived in Lyndon, Virginia on the floor of the Gap at 10:45. Downtown Lyndon was a post office about the size of a postage stamp, with a payphone in its tiny parking lot and a small combination gas station / general store directly across the street. Another throbbing metropolis along the Appalachian Trail. I picked up my supply package at the post office and proceeded outside to select the supplies I would require for the 45 miles to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. My original plan had not included a visit to that trail town, but I wanted to visit the headquarters of the Appalachian Trail Conference, the people who had made this adventure possible. I also badly needed a shower, and a night in bed would be a nice plus. Strangely enough, despite its cosmopolitan atmosphere, Lyndon had no hotels or motels. I may have gone a little heavy on the munchies while loading my backpack, but I do love my munchies. I would just have to buy some more in Harper's Ferry. I resealed the package with remaining supplies and mailed it to myself in care of General Delivery, Harper's Ferry. The Lyndon postmaster assured me that it will be waiting for me Monday when I arrive. While I was outside, a man who was preparing to begin a short backpacking trip in Shenandoah National Park stopped by to talk with me. Through hikers are minor celebrities in backpacking circles. The rest of the world's attitude is rather mixed. My last stop before leaving Lyndon was at the general store. I loitered outside with a cola and a pint of ice cream as 1 o'clock came and went. The night's shelter was less than 4 miles ahead, but the steamy air and the long, steep climb on the north side of the Gap somewhat dampened my enthusiasm. Virginia routes 638 and 601, narrow, winding strips of two-lane pavement, run along the flat, low crest of the northern tip of the Blue Ridge for most of the distance from Lyndon north almost to the end of Virginia. This portion of the range is not to be confused with the Appalachia surrounding much of the trail further south. There's a lot of money in this area, old money. The Appalachian Trail is not popular here, and the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, which maintains this section, is forced to scramble in order to get any kind of a trail at all. That probably explains why the route snakes around so much in Virginia north of Shenandoah, and is definitely the reason I'll be seeing a lot of Virginia state roads the next few days. Large sections of the footpath have been closed by landowners. The next mile and a half climbed steeply out of Manassas Gap, first on the paved road and then on a dirt woods road paralleling the highway a few yards to the east. Following that, the AT went back onto Virginia 638 for about 20 yards in order to bypass an apple orchard. Apparently, the owner does not trust through hikers around anything edible, a not unreasonable attitude. The AT once again left the road, passing through a pasture along its way back into the woods. The final 2 miles of the Appalachian Trail today played Lost in the Woods again, but at least this time it was a very attractive forest through which I seemed to be meandering pointlessly. I arrived at Manassas Gap Shelter at 2:20, despite my long stop in Lyndon. It was quite a luxury to have the entire afternoon in which to kick back after all those long days in Shenandoah. I spread my sleeping bag and started to catch up on my letter and journal writing. I had a leisurely dinner. I'm going to bed early tonight. I need a good night of sleep in order to make up for those sleepless nights in the crowded shelters of Shenandoah National Park. Saturday, the 9th of July 1983, mile 965.4. That coupled with the nice dog showed up at Manassas Gap Shelter late last evening. Dinner was another long, noisy project, topped off with popcorn cooked in a metal pot at about 11 o'clock. Gee, I hope I didn't snore and keep them awake when they finally turned in. I was a walking zombie when I hit the trail this morning around 7:45. My friends were still in their sleeping bags. They had mentioned to Mark and me on Thursday night that they hitchhike around many less interesting sections of the Appalachian Trail. I hope they do so today. I'm so sleepy I'm about ready to fall down. The first 7 miles of trail were another game of Lost in the Woods. When it was over, I sat down to rest for 10 minutes on a rock beside the trail. 5 minutes after resuming my hike, I passed a park bench in the middle of a clearing surrounded by a pleasant forest grove. I wished this spot had been mentioned in my guidebook. It looked more comfortable than my rock. The land on which it sat was part of Sky Meadows State Park, a large tract of land which had been donated to the state by a wealthy Virginia couple. After the park, the AT emerged onto a gravel road which had until recently been the trail route for the ensuing 3 miles to Ashby Gap. A recent trail relocation took me along several dirt woods roads through a rather attractive forest. The woods roads must have been established public rights of way. Everything around them was private property. The atmosphere was marred slightly by an incredible profusion of no trespassing signs. One nice feature about hiking the Appalachian Trail is you get to see the world. Damascus, Virginia, Berlin, New Hampshire. Today in Ashby Gap, I finally got to see Paris. It was not quite as I'd expected, and I could not seem to locate the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre. I did, however, find a quaint little bistro right on the AT at the point where the trail crossed US 50. No escargot on the menu, but the Paris diner did offer good, plain food at reasonable prices. I had a lot of it, yet the tab came out to less than $6. In keeping with tradition, I kicked back with a glass of Chateau Coca-Cola and created literary art in my journal for a while after my meal. I lingered for more than an hour and did not shove off again until 1 o'clock. Downtown Paris was a mile from the trail, and I was too tired to add a 2-mile round trip to my day. Nevertheless, I should have been able to catch a glimpse of the Arc de Triomphe or the Cathedral Notre Dame from that distance. Syllabi. The remainder of the AT up to the side trail to Three Springs Shelter was an unbroken 6.5-mile road walk along the ever-present Virginia State Road 601. As usual, the winding 2-lane road followed the crest of the Blue Ridge, making a considerable climb out of Ashby Gap at the beginning, but soon reached gentler, rolling terrain. North of Shandar, the Blue Ridge is much lower and more flattened along the crest as it begins to disappear into the long wooded ridges of the Central Appalachians. Massive gates of stone and wrought iron sporting wooden signs, adorned with flowery names like Morningside and Rockwood, broke the steady screen of dense forest pressing against both flanks of the road. I saw little of the wealthy estates beyond, but I did see dozens of no trespassing signs. I suspect that the latter are the official flower of Northern Virginia. There were many other signs to tell me about all the other things that I could not do here. My favourite said, "No nothing." I think that summed it all up very nicely. Just before the Shelter Trail, I passed a sprawling federal government installation called Mount Weather, developed around the turn of the century as a research station for the National Weather Service. Today, it's restricted and secret, surrounded by huge fences decorated with razor wire, no trespassing signs, and armed guards. Even our own government likes to make hikers feel welcome along the AT in Northern Virginia. I was told that this installation is the site where the President and other high US government officials are to be evacuated in the event of a nuclear war. Gave me a nice warm feeling. Three Springs Shelter was a mile from the road down a loop trail, most of which had been part of the Appalachian Trail before several landowners closed the remainder of the trail through this section. I arrived here at the shelter at 4 o'clock. It was in surprisingly excellent condition, considering that it had been built in 1940. I spread out my sleeping bag and set up my gear for dinner. Around 5 o'clock, a 40-ish Virginian and 2 younger men from Pennsylvania dropped in. They were all on extended backpacking trips on the AT, heading south. We were able to trade a great deal of information about what lay ahead on our respective hikes. Current information such as this is always invaluable. Changes are constantly being made in the trail route, and sometimes these relocations do not make it into the latest guidebooks. In addition, many of the small businesses located on or near the Appalachian Trail, stores, campgrounds, etc., fail or are reopened almost overnight. They're all staying at this shelter tonight, so we'll have plenty of time to trade information and a few laughs. Mark left me a note at the end of his entry into this shelter's register last night. It read, "Hi George, it's best to devote your life to drinking water and p***ing. It's growing dark now. When the stars come out, I'm going to lay out under the night sky and gaze up at them for a while as a tribute to Mark. I hope that, once in a while, he's able to do so too."